Hello, everybody. This is Frederick. Frederick. Frederick Wakuliaka. Issues of the day. I failed to make a production of the previous weekend's intelligence brief. So in a today I'm actually doing the weekend intelligence brief of last weekend of Saturday 14th 15th June because I do not want to have a mess. I'll go slowly but methodically and and finish every task even if I delay because I'm doing everything on on my own, but I do not want to 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 put my podcast and um, content creation activities to a halt. I would rather do them if slowly but certainly complete the tasks I've set for myself. So let us proceed. I hope to also I'll release the week's business intelligence brief for Friday today. I may not do it early, but it will come late tonight. So it doesn't affect my schedule for tomorrow with the AI breach report review for the week, Wednesday and Friday. So without much further ado, let me get myself some water before we proceed. So this is weekend intelligence brief, Saturday, Sunday, 14th to 15th June. Welcome to Issues of the Day, the weekend intelligence brief from Frederick Cybersecurity. I'm Frederick Wakuliaka. It was Saturday, the 14th of June, 2026, and this is the intelligence briefing for the previous weekend. This publication is the strategic business intelligence companion to the AI breach report, which I publish every Wednesday. So every Wednesday and Friday on LinkedIn, where the AI breach report delivers the technical incident detail, the vulnerability analysis, and the defense frameworks. Issues of the Day delivers the business and strategic layer. What these developments mean for your organization, your leadership, your decisions, and your competitive position. This weekend, the previous weekend, I'm covering 3 stories that every managing director, finance director, and operations lead at a medium enterprise needs to understand before the working week begins. The first is the Oracle PeopleSoft breach. A criminal group called Shiny Hunters exploited a critical flaw in one of the most widely deployed enterprise resource planning platforms in the world. And at least 100 organizations have confirmed data has been taken. If your organization uses PeopleSoft or if any of your vendors do this edition is for you. The third is a critical vulnerability in Splunk Enterprise, a platform used by security operations centers around the world to monitor and detect threats. The flow allows an attacker to take complete control of a Splunk server without providing any credentials at all. And on Amazon Web Services deployments, the vulnerable configuration is switched on by default. Oh, excuse me a moment. I have to reconnect. Sorry about this, but I lost input to my other device. So I have to reconnect it again. I thought I had enough juice, but unfortunately, it's one of these things. It 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 decided that it needs some energy. So I have to connect it to the power outlet. And see whether it will come on and save my day. So in addition, I've been trying to configure redesign my website. I'm having a bit of grief, but it was going to be sorted. I'll have it up and running within the next short time. So I'm back now. So we talked about PeopleSoft and Oracle PeopleSoft. Let's focus on story one, Oracle PeopleSoft, the enterprise data breach your vendor may not have told you about. Oracle PeopleSoft is one of the most widely deployed enterprise resource planning systems in the world. Organizations in financial services, healthcare, professional services, higher education, and the public sector use it to manage human resources, payroll, finance, procurement, and student administration. It holds some of the most sensitive data any organization processes: employee records, payroll information, financial transactions, identity documents, and in healthcare settings, patient data. Last week, a criminal group known as Shiny Hunters exploited a critical vulnerability in Oracle PeopleSoft. The flow carries a severity score of 9.8 out of 10, the highest possible classification for a software vulnerability. That score, so when I talk of last week, that was last weekend, the week of that previous weekend. That score exists because this flow can be exploited by an attacker over the internet without needing to know any password, without needing to be inside your network, and without triggering most standard security controls. The confirmed victim count has reached at least 100 organizations. That number is a floor, not a ceiling. Breach disclosures take time. Legal review, regulatory notifications, and internal investigations all happen before public confirmation. The organizations that have not yet confirmed the breach are not necessarily safe. They may simply not yet know. One confirmed victim is the University of Nottingham. The university acknowledged that data was accessed and is investigating the scope. For a higher education institution, that scope includes student records, staff, personnel files, and financial data. For an enterprise, the equivalent scope is your payroll, your HR records, and your accounts. Shiny Hunters is not a new threat actor. This group has been active for several years and is responsible for a significant number of large-scale data breaches. They operate commercially, which means data they acquire is sold, traded, or used for further attacks, including credential stuffing, social engineering, and targeted fraud. Now, here is what I want you to think about as a business leader. Because this is not simply a story about Oracle, and it is not simply a story about large universities, Nottingham. The question I want you to ask is not, do we run PeopleSoft? The question I want you to ask is, do any of our suppliers, outsourcing partners, payroll providers, or professional service firms run PeopleSoft? If any of your vendors, HR or payroll on your behalf, if any of your vendors manages HR or payroll on your behalf, that is, if you have outsourced your HR or payroll to a vendor, if any of your outsourced service providers processes financial data for your organization, if any of your professional services partners stores client data on an enterprise platform, then your data may be inside a system that was compromised in this breach, even if your own organization does not use PeopleSoft directly. This is what is called a third-party breach. It is one of the most underestimated risks facing medium enterprises. You can invest significantly in your own security posture and still be exposed because a vendor you trust has not done the same. The business impact here is multi-layered. There is the direct risk. If you use PeopleSoft, your data may have been accessed. There is the vendor risk. If any of your key suppliers use PeopleSoft data, they hold on your behalf. If any of your suppliers use PeopleSoft data they hold on your behalf may have been accessed. There is the regulatory risk. If personal data belonging to your employees or clients was held in a compromised system, you may have reporting obligations under the United Kingdom's GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, or sector-specific regulations in financial services or healthcare. And there is the reputation risk, which arrives regardless of whether your systems were directly involved. If your clients discover their data was held by a vendor who was breached. What does this mean practically for the week ahead? That is, this week, we've crashed this week, so let us assume that this is also part and parcel of the threats and the dangers you have to also, in addition to what I'm going to unleash today and tomorrow, you'll have a lot of homework. I'm sorry, this is a bit of a backlog. First, if your organization uses Oracle PeopleSoft, You need a conversation with your IT team or your managed service provider as soon as possible, not next month, this week or the next week. The question is whether the patch for this vulnerability has been applied and whether any indicators of compromise have been investigated. Second, you need to audit your vendor relationships. Make a list of every supplier, outsourcing partner, and professional service firm that processes data on your behalf. For each of them, ask whether they use Oracle, PeopleSoft, and ask what their patch status is. And ask what their patch status is. This is a legitimate question, and any credible vendor will be able to answer it. Third, review your data processing agreements. Under UK GDPR, your data processors have obligations to notify you when a breach has occurred. If a vendor holds your employee or client data and has experienced a breach, you may have reporting obligations that begin from the moment you become aware, not from the moment the vendor tells you. This story is a direct example of why vendor risk management is not an IT function. It is a board level function. The organizations that will navigate this breach well are those whose leadership teams understand what data they hold, who holds it on their behalf, and what their contractual and regulatory obligations are when something goes wrong. I want to say one more thing about shiny hunters before I move on. Criminal groups like this do not operate randomly. They identify high value target classes, platforms that hold concentrated high quality data across many organizations simultaneously. And they exploit them systematically. Oracle PeopleSoft was that target class this time. Excuse me, just a moment, please. Hello? Yes, how are you? Yep. No, the MOT is due of that car. The MOT is due. So what did it come to the cost? Mm-hmm. You said how much? That's a high steep figure. Was it the only the you did the steering wheel? Okay. All right, I'll come over to see you. Just I'm coming over. Bye. Yeah. So I'll not disappear again. This is the last time. It was just an emergency call I had to attend to. So we're talking about PeopleSoft, and I had just one thing to say about a criminal, one more thing to say about the shiny hunters, that they do not operate randomly. They identify high value target classes, platforms that hold concentrated, high quality data across many organizations simultaneously, and they exploit them systematically. Oracle PeopleSoft was that target class this time. The next time it will be something else. The defense against this class of threat is not patching a single system. It is maintaining a continuous, structured understanding of your attack surface, including the vendors, platforms, and third parties that extend that surface beyond your own walls. So that is story one, complete PeopleSoft. Story two, agent jacking, when your AI coding tools become the attack vector. Before I tell you what agent jacking is, I want to explain why this story belongs in the Weekend Intelligence Brief and not only in a technical publication. In the past 18 months, the adoption of AI coding tools has accelerated significantly across organizations of every size. Developers use tools like GitHub, Copilot, Cursor, and similar AI assisted environments to write code faster, review code more efficiently, and automate repetitive development tasks. Many medium enterprises have either already adopted these tools or are in the process of evaluating them. At the same time, these tools have become integrated into something called the software development pipeline, the automated sequence of processes that takes code from a developer screen to a live production system. In modern development environments, this pipeline is increasingly automated and increasingly AI assisted. What researchers have now confirmed is that there is an attack class that targets this pipeline, specifically targeting AI coding agents in a way that bypasses conventional security controls entirely. The attack is called agent jacking. Here is how it works, explained in plain language. Developers use a tool called Sentry to monitor their applications. When something goes wrong in a live application, an error, a crash, an unexpected behavior, Sentry captures that event and sends it back to the development environment so the team can investigate and fix it. What attackers have discovered is that they can inject content into Sentry error events. They can take the message that Sentry sends back to the development environment and embed instructions inside it. When an AI coding agent receives that error event and begins to process it as it is designed to do, it reads the embedded instructions. And because the AI agent is operating with permissions to read and write code, to commit changes to a code repository, and in some configurations, to interact with cloud infrastructure, those injected instructions are executed with the same permissions the legitimate developer would have. The attacker has not breached your firewall. They have not stolen a password. They have not sent a phishing email. They have written instructions into an error message that your AI tool then acted on using your own developer's credentials and permissions. This is called a prompt injection attack, and when it targets an AI agent operating within a software development pipeline, the consequences can include code being modified without developer awareness, credentials being exfiltrated from the development environment, and in cases where the agent in cases where the agent has cloud permissions, infrastructure being modified or data being accessed. Now, here's why this matters at the leadership level. Most organizations have security policies and access controls built around the assumption that human beings make the decisions to write code, commit changes, and interact with production systems. The AI coding agent bypasses that assumption. It is not a human being, it does not have the same skepticism, the same context, or the same ability to recognize that an instruction is malicious. If your developers are using AI coding tools and those tools are integrated into your development pipeline, you now have an attack surface that most organizations do not have explicit security controls for. The business risk here is significant. In financial services, unauthorized code modifications in a production environment can create compliance exposure, regulatory risk, and direct financial loss. In healthcare, modified application modified application behavior can affect patient safety and data integrity. In professional services, code repositories contain intellectual property and client data. What does this mean practically? If your organization uses AI coding tools, the first conversation you need to have with your technology team is about the permissions those tools operate with. An AI coding agent that has write access to production code repositories, access to live credentials, and integration with cloud infrastructure represents a high value target for this class of attack. The principle that should govern AI tool permissions is the same principle that governs human access, least privilege. The AI tool should have exactly the permissions it needs to do its job and no more. The second conversation is about monitoring. When a human developer commits a code change, there is typically a review process. A second human being reviews the change before it goes live. When an AI agent makes a change, that same review process may not be in place. If it is not, it should be any change to code or infrastructure initiated by an AI tool should be subject to the same review and approval process as a change initiated by a human. The third conversation is about awareness. Your developers are not the only people who need to understand this risk. Your operations directors, your finance directors, and your risk function need to understand that the AI tools your organization has adopted or is considering adopting represent a new category of attack surface that requires explicit security governance. Agent jacking is new in name. The underlying technique manipulating an automated system by injecting malicious content into legitimate data flows is not new. What is new is that the automated system being targeted is an AI agent operating with significant permissions inside a live production environment. This attack class will evolve. The organizations that establish governance frameworks for AI tool permissions and monitoring now will be significantly better positioned when that evolution occurs. Story 3, we go to that was story 2, agent jacking. Now the first was PeopleSoft. Story 3, Splunk Enterprises. The security tool with a critical flaw in its default configuration. This story has a particular irony to it that I want to acknowledge immediately. Splunk Enterprise is a security operations platform. Organizations use it to ingest log data from across their technology environment. Firewalls, servers, applications, cloud infrastructure, and to detect anomalies. I've tried to play about with Splunk before. So it was used for SOC analysis as well. Firewalls, servers, applications, cloud infrastructure, and to detect anomalies, investigate incidents, and monitor for threats. It is, in other words, a tool organizations deploy specifically to protect themselves from cyber attacks. The flow carries the same severity score as the Oracle PeopleSoft vulnerability. I described it in Story 1, 9.8 out of 10. Pre-authentication remote code execution, that means an attacker with network access to a Splunk server can execute code on that server without first logging in. They do not need a username. They do not need a password. They need network access. For organizations running Splunk organizations running Splunk on Amazon Web Services, which is a common deployment model, the vulnerable configuration is enabled by default at installation. If your organization has deployed Splunk on AWS and has not specifically reviewed and adjusted the default configuration, this vulnerability may be present in your environment right now. Now, let me explain why this matters beyond the technical detail. Splunk is the system your security team uses to see what is happening across your environment. If an attacker compromises Splunk, they do not just gain access to a server, they gain visibility into the same telemetry your security team is using to detect threats. They can see what your detection rules are. They can see which alerts are firing and which are not. They can identify the gaps in your monitoring and exploit them. More significantly, an attacker with control of your Splunk server can modify your detection rules, suppress alerts, and create blind spots in your security monitoring, all without triggering the very system you would normally use to detect that an intrusion has occurred. This is what security professionals call a detection bypass. The attacker is not trying to avoid your security tools, they are inside your security tools. So, for organizations that rely on Splunk as their primary security monitoring platform, a successful exploitation of this vulnerability effectively neutralizes the monitoring layer entirely. What this means for business leaders. If your organization uses Splunk Enterprise, this is a priority or conversation with your security team or your managed security service provider as soon as possible. The specific questions are whether the default configuration has been reviewed, and whether any indicators of compromise on the Splunk infrastructure has been investigated. If you are running Splunk on Amazon Web Services, these questions are more urgent, not less. The default enabled configuration means the vulnerable state is the starting point for an AWS deployment, not an exception to it. There is also a broader point here for organizations that outsource their security monitoring. Many medium enterprises do not run Splunk in-house. They engage a managed security provider who runs a Splunk environment on their behalf. If you are in that category, your question is not, have we patched our Splunk? It is, has our managed security provider patched their Splunk? That is a legitimate and necessary question to ask your provider this week. The third and final point I want to make is about the relationship between security tool coverage and genuine security posture. There is a common assumption in many organizations that deploying a security tool, a monitoring platform, a firewall, a detection system constitutes security. What this story illustrates is that the tool itself can become a vulnerability if it is not maintained, configured correctly, and monitored. Security is not a product you purchase and install, it is a continuous process of assessment, maintenance, and improvement. Splunk is a powerful and valuable platform when it is correctly deployed and maintained. When it is left in a default vulnerable configuration, it becomes a high-value target. The question for every leader in this audience is not whether your organization has security tools. The question is whether these tools are correctly configured, actively maintained, and regularly reviewed. That is story 3. 3 decisions to be made. This was meant to come out on the weekend. I was giving 3 decisions you should take before Monday, but you can add this to the many that I'm going to give for the weekend brief and for the AI breach report and for this week's business intelligence brief. So this is one of the many. If your organization uses Oracle PeopleSoft, or if any of your key vendors, payroll providers, or outsourcing partners use Oracle PeopleSoft, task your IT team or managed service provider to confirm patch status for the critical vulnerability exploited in the Shiny Hunters breach. Do not wait for a vendor to come to you. The breach is already confirmed across more than 100 organizations. The time for proactive verification is now. Decision 2. If your organization uses AI coding tools, including GitHub, Copilot, Cursor, or any AI-assisted development environment, schedule a review of the permissions those tools operate with. The specific question is whether those tools have right access to production code repositories or live infrastructure, and whether any code changes initiated by AI agents are subject to the same human review and approval process as changes initiated by developers directly. If the answer to either question is no, you have a governance gap that requires immediate attention. Decision 3. If your organization uses Splunk Enterprise, or if your managed security service provider uses Splunk on your behalf, confirm this week that the critical pre-authentication remote code execution vulnerability has been patched and that the default configuration on any Amazon Web Services deployment has been reviewed. If you cannot get a clear answer on both points within 48 hours, escalate it. 3 decisions, 3 conversations before Monday. On Wednesday this week, the AI Breach Report published its next edition. Wednesday editions focus on incident intelligence, the major breaches, the critical vulnerabilities, and the threat activity that your organization needs to understand. On Friday, the defense-focused companion edition publishes the frameworks, the controls, and the specific actions your security team and your leadership can take in response to what Wednesday covered. Both editions are available on LinkedIn. If you are not yet a subscriber to the AI Breach Report newsletter, the link is in LinkedIn description. All recordings are available on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Search Frederick Cybersecurity. About Frederick Cybersecurity is a specialist consultancy protecting medium enterprises in financial services, professional services, and healthcare from the rapidly evolving threat landscape of the AI era. I produce the daily business intelligence brief every weekday at 9 o'clock GMT. I publish the AI breach report every Wednesday and Friday as a long-form LinkedIn newsletter. And I publish issues of the day, this weekend intelligence brief, every Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning, GMT. If this program has been valuable to you, please subscribe on YouTube. Share it with a colleague who needs to hear it. And if your organization is looking for structured, practical cybersecurity guidance for medium enterprises, visit frederickcybersecurity.com. I'm Frederick Wakoliaka. This has been Issues of the Day, the weekend intelligence brief from Frederick Cybersecurity. 3 stories, 3 decisions before Monday. I will see you tonight with the roundup of the business intelligence brief Monday to Friday.